Hey everyone, and welcome to the Perfect Bite podcast, your fusion of food and entrepreneurship. You'll hear stories from chefs, restaurateurs, CPG brands, and more from the food and bev industry. All of them are at different points in their journeys, talking about their experiences and how they've cooked up something new. Let's dig in. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Perfect Bite podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Perkins. What do you get when you combine Michelin-starred culinary training with a hint of whimsy? Duck Sel, the private dining concept from today's guest. It's hard not to smile when you have a bite from Duck Sel, paired with dry ice and equally magical storytelling. Who knew rubber duckies could be so chic? Please welcome today's guest, Chef Donald Young. Hi, Don.
How you doing?
I am so well. I'm so happy to see you. I haven't seen you in person it's been since last year.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
Portland.
Yes. And then we were down in Nashville together. I was running around. I was in the kitchen with you guys. That was pretty funny, actually, because someone took my seat. But that's truly, at a dinner like that, it was one of the best seats in the house because I saw everything come together and It was just such a cool concept.
Yes, indeed.
So fun. Alrighty. So I always love to start here at the beginning. You've got such an interesting story. When did you first fall in love with food? What were some of those favorite foods when you were a kid?
Well, when I first fell in love with food was after I started working in the industry. Growing up, I had a very plain palate with parents that weren't very adventurous eaters anyways. It was a lot of stuff out of a box, out of a can. Sundays, we either went to Chili's for our really nice family dinner, or we had steaks on the grill with maybe a roasted potato and corn on the cob. Most of the times it was boxed mashed potatoes as well. So going through the years, I never ate much more than, going out to a restaurant. It was always burgers. I always got a burger, a cheeseburger. I never forget the time when I wanted to not look so plain to a friend. I tried to force myself to eat ribs. And I was like, the whole time I was thinking, I'd just rather have a burger right now. Going forward, my first job was at a Culver's for 2.5 years. But while I was there, about to turn 17, my dad, he worked in the bar and restaurant industry, and he had a U.S. Foods rep that had worked for a high-end chef back in the day, and I always had this small interest in cooking. During the holidays, like Thanksgiving and Christmas, I always helped my mom cook. It was, like I said, most stuff out of a box. It was like throwing canned green beans with cream and mushroom soup into it, all that kind of stuff. So I never really had real cooking experience, but I always enjoyed doing it. And I had this opportunity to work at this high-end restaurant for free. So I went and met with Roland Liccioni, and I was like big metalhead, so big curly fro, wore all black, big metal chain, studded belt, all that you could think of. And reluctantly he said yes. And I started working one day a week to learn. And it was a very miserable time, actually. When you don't know what you're doing.
Oh, really?
It ends up becoming...
Yeah.
I was cutting myself left and right. I was super slow. The work was tedious, especially when you're at the lowest end of the totem pole and you don't know anything. You're just given the most simple and easiest task to accomplish, and they're just time consuming. So for the first few months, I just almost hated going every single time. I kept doing it. I didn't enjoy food still at this time. I was still very plain. It was just ketchup, mustard on a burger kind of thing. And after a few months, I remember this one night, they gave me the leftover tuna tartare to take home. I had no idea what it was. And when I got home, my mom saw it and asked me, well, what's this? And I was like, well, it's tuna tartare. And she goes, do you know what that is?
Yeah.
I'm like, I have no idea. And she goes, that's raw fish. I said, that's gross. And I threw it away. So yeah, that's how it was. After a few months, I decided well, if this is what I'm going to be doing with my life, I got to force myself to start liking food. And while I was at Culver's, I'd just get everything on my burger when it was on break. And I'd force myself to start eating lettuce, tomatoes, and onions on it. Pickles were the last thing. I always had terrible experiences with pickles on burgers from McDonald's. When you were a kid, you don't want it. And half the time they always forget to take it off. So you always get that surprise pickle. But, pickles are one of my favorite thing now. I pickle everything. So full circle there, right? So yeah, I started to force myself to like food. And then at a certain turning point, it started becoming, I'm enjoying all this stuff. This is what I want to be eating. My kid palate has finally evolved and gotten to a point. After those few months, I just got kind of frustrated with it. I had a girlfriend in high school. I worked 35 hours a week at Culver's on top of that. And then I was sacrificing my Saturday night to go work at this restaurant. And I just had enough of it because I wasn't in love with it as much as I thought I was. And midday, I went up to the chef and just told him I wasn't feeling well and I was going to go home. And he said, okay, whatever. And I left with the intentions of never going back. The next day at our nice family restaurant that we went to, Chili's, I told my parents I wasn't going to do this anymore. And they guilted me hard. And they told me, no, you need to just go back and you'll fall in love with it fully eventually. It's not a great spot for you right now. So I decided to go back. And then a couple of weeks later, the restaurant closed. But something had clicked and I fell in love. And so since the restaurant closed, I was like, well, I guess I need to find another restaurant to go do this at. And so I searched around and I reached out to a few different restaurants. I found one. It was a little bit of a big deal for a suburban French restaurant. So I started working there too. And that's how everything kind of kicked off.
This is so interesting to me. Not that I ever became a Michelin-starred chef from all of this, but I also had that similar experience growing up. Like Chili's was our birthday dinner spot. And similarly, again, this kind of Midwestern upbringing of it's just what our parents knew. A lot of canned goods, a lot of boxed goods. It was quick. It was simple, get it in front of your kids. And it really is that moment when you finally taste something new. And at first you're like, well, that seems weird and that seems funny and different looking. And you're like, wow, this is incredible. What else is there out there? So in your case, you had front row seats and training at French restaurants, which is, as folks like to think of it, the epitome of classical training and cuisine. Tell us a little bit more about what happened at that suburban restaurant. And you ended up finding your way to France, didn't you?
Yeah. When I was at Le Francais, a lot of my tasks were slicing shiitakes really thin and frying them to make like little crisps on a plate. I remember a few times I broke down lobster, and that was extremely difficult to do.
Yeah.
And there was one guy, this is probably the biggest help that really kept me in the industry, was this one guy that helped me out that for some reason took a strong liking to me. Because it's also hard. I think everyone was in their 30s at this place or older. And so it was hard to like connect with any of these people. There were a few times I had moments that we connected, but like, it's not like I went out with them afterward. Like I had to go straight home afterwards. So I was 17. And when I would kind of finish up, or the guy I was on the station I was working on, whenever I'd finish up what he had for me, I would just bounce around and just ask everyone what they need help with. And this guy, Jose, who I'm pretty sure was the sous chef of the restaurant, he would like, no, you stay over here. You'll do this. Break down these lobsters. Do this. You'll stay here for service. You'll plate the amuse all night. You'll do this all night. So he kind of took me under his wing and kept me going with projects and all that. There was a night that I was working on the hot side with chef on the meat side, and I'll never forget that sous vide quail leg. I remember pulling it out of the bag and turning from the stove over to him to give it to him to cut, and it broke in half and fell to the floor. And he was just standing there staring at me. And after that, I picked a whole case of parsley. Got kicked off the line. Yeah. It's
a little
fun,
punishment.
But part of the reasons why I wasn't in love with him, Roland scared me a lot. He was your typical French chef, less screaming and yelling. He did throw stuff, which was nice.
That's a plus.
Yeah. I watched him make a few people cry and all that. It was its time back then. So that was another reason why I wasn't really in love with it also. So after those few months, one of the things my parents kind of convinced me to go back was maybe it's just not the right restaurant. I was in love with Italian food at that time and really wanted to learn. I remember on my drive there, I'd pass a Buca de Beppo, and I was like, that's a place I want to go work at. And not knowing it's a chain, some like just mediocre Italian place, right? And not realizing I'm working at a 5-star French restaurant that's basically world renowned almost. And just not being able to take in what I could have. And regrettably, I look back at those times now. It's like, man, I really wish I had a more open mind. I knew more than what I did, so I could have taken in more from that place. But I mean, that's part of the learning process, right? Those eye-opening moments. I actually sit here now and look back. It's like, wow, my time at Culver's, as simple as the food may be, those systems they have in place to make it flow and efficient were actually, watching the movie The Thunder was actually like an eye-opening movie to me. It was like, wow, that is so true how thoughtful and thought out it is, how that whole thing's put together. So yeah, I projected off. Le Titi de Paris was the name of the restaurant. I changed everything in my senior year to be culinary focused. I went to a vocational school. I started applying for culinary schools. I actually only really applied to a couple. I got accepted to Kendall and figured I'd stay here in Chicago. And at a certain point, that sous chef Jose went to open up a restaurant in the suburbs, and I dropped everything and went to go help him. And the restaurant didn't open well. It was super slow. He got let go, which in turn got me let go, especially because I wasn't that most efficient use of payroll at that time still too. But hooked and everything kept continuing on. Eventually went off to culinary school, but right the summer before, I ended up back with Jose at Vinya Festivals, actually, because I just want to keep working for him around. And I spent the summer there, working there, learning how to actually work a station by yourself, which was really intense, but a meaningful learning experience,
Definitely. I think we can thank Jose a lot. He's been a great mentor to you.
But yeah, I went off to culinary school, and as I went there, I told him all I wanted to do was go to France for my internship, and that was my main focus. I got denied twice, and I remember, I'll never forget, I got a call down to the office for internship, and there was a new person there, and she's like, the guy before was let go. He wasn't doing a great job in like some other stuff, and she's like, we're going to get you to France. And she's like, I think I have the spot for you. The only problem is it's in 6 months, not in 3 months, which is when you need to have your internship. So we'll have to move classes around, and that's not really allowed and all that. So fortunately, the dean of my culinary school had worked for my chef for, I think, like 5 to 10 years or something like that. So with that background, my resume and all that, they let me switch the classes around. So I got to jump ahead. Which is funny now because your internship is your final project now at Kendall, the way they switch everything around. So I guess I was just the leading person to show that you don't need internship mid-classes. Yeah, I went to France for 6 months, and it was the most magical experience ever. I learned a lot. It was a wild experience, a 20-seat restaurant that had a Michelin star. We did a lunch service and a dinner service. It was a really weird day thing. We started at 9 a.m. Half the time we would meet at the market and buy what we're going to make that day. And then we take a little siesta at 3 p.m. and come back at 6, eat staff meal, and we'd be dinner service by 7.
Wow. That does sound magical. I mean, the fact that you picked up that morning what you were going to cook with, how fresh can you get?
Exactly, yeah. And those markets out there, the actual farmers markets, they're so much better. I'd actually never been to a farmers market until France. And I'll never forget when I came back for my dining room class at Kendall, and they're like, we're going to go as a little field trip. We're going to go to the farmers market. We're all going to meet there and walk around. It's a magical place, the most amazing thing you're ever going to see. And then I walked in there, it was raining, it was muddy. I was like, this is shit. It's like the one in France
was absolutely not.
The one in France was a giant square, beautiful square, tons of vendors. And this is a small town. It's like a 20,000 person town, and it's 10 times better than what we have here in Chicago. And the variety of things you can buy is much more vast than it is here in Chicago, where it's like all zucchini and squash basically during the summer. I miss that market a lot. It was amazing.
Maybe you'll end up living there someday because
Maybe.
yeah, they do things so differently. They really have a grasp on food and especially fresh food farming that we just have not gotten to. The more conversations I
Yeah,
have on this podcast, the more positive that we can get there one day because a lot of folks want that, but it's just not how we have that. It's very disappointing.
it is.
So you had this glorious time in France, and like we're shooting this in the summer, this coming out in the summer. All I can think about right now is different colors of asparagus, as you say that, and just making an asparagus tart or something. So you come back to the States. When did you decide during all of that it was time to start doing your own thing?
Well, actually, even before I went off to internship, I actually ended up back working for Roland Liccioni. For my first project at culinary school, there were three projects this class. One was write a small essay about three different chefs, and I wrote about Roland. Even though I was scared of him and everything, after working with Jose a bit longer, I really started to get a grasp of like who I was working for, and then realized the dean of my school worked for him and all that. And it's like, I'm working for a very impressive guy. Basically, the lead chef that wasn't the dean was his best friend since they were 4 years old. So
Wow.
realizing like the resume I had just built already, I realized like this is a guy I need to keep working for. Like he's got a huge sway. He's trained a lot of great people. Well, everyone has a lot of respect for him. So yeah, I had to do the small essay, and then I had to critique a restaurant, and then do an interview with the chef. And so I decided to go to his restaurant, Old Town Brasserie, at the time, to go critique the restaurant. And one of the food runners recognized me, actually, who worked at La Francais. And so he brought me into the kitchen to say hi to chef, because I was too afraid to do that. It's not like I knew him well enough or anything. And so I came back to do the interview with him. And one of the cooks had heard stories about this big fro metalhead kid and really wanted to get to know me for some reason. So he's like, hey, why don't you stay for staff meal? Hey, why don't you segment this lemon? Hey, all of a sudden I'm staging at this restaurant. I was supposed to be out by 4 o'clock. So I ended up working there. I pulled the chef aside and I told him, I was like, I'll do anything to work for you right now for free, whatever, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so I
Well, I was forgotten.
Yep. I ended up following him for the next 9-10 years with that on and off, in between France, while he wasn't in a restaurant and all that. So overall, he became my mentor. And through those years, the one I worked most consistently with for the longest time was Lane Ahmad for 5 years. I started out in pastry and worked my way all the way up to chef cuisine, basically. And my friend Sam, who was working there, he and another friend of ours that worked there, they left to go open a restaurant. I was jealous about this because Sam had only worked for like 5-6 years as a garde manger cook, and all of a sudden now he's going to go open a restaurant. It's like, well, what am I doing with that? Why am I not getting to that point also? So I started to try and do some pop-ups. I did a couple. Mind you, when I was there, I was consistently making a lot of dishes every week, especially for this family that came in twice a week that got a special 3-course menu every single time they came in. So at first it was just me making one dish, then all of a sudden it's two, and then I'm making 3 dishes with a dessert to offer if they wanted. They weren't really big on getting dessert. So, a lot of things coming through, even though a lot of my training is classical French, at that time, I actually ran into some trouble twice, actually. I got 2 DUIs my time working there. Yeah, I fell down a hard path of drugs and alcohol. The first one wasn't that bad. The second one, I lost my license and everything. So I had a lot of time on my hands going to work because I had to take public transit. And that's where I started to learn most of my stuff of Googling any question I had, any idea I had to try and figure out different methods and techniques. With Roland, he does not use like agar-agar or any of those hydrocolloids or any molecular gastronomy. I had to learn that on my own and trial and errors with it all. Fortunately, I had a restaurant like that to back me up to be able to do it, but it started to jumpstart what was to come those few years later. When Sam went to go open Temperance, I went through a breakup. and couldn't find a place to live because my lifestyle wasn't really that great when you're looking for a room to rent with people you don't know. So I ended up on this couch, actually, and I started helping Temperance any way possible on my off time. But eventually found a room to rent that was a block away from both Sam and Temperance. So when I was walking home from work, I would walk past Temperance, and if Sam was in there, like just sitting around, I'd pop in. Or if they needed help with service, I'd pop in. And after the first couple months, his co-chef and him weren't working out. So it just became the obvious choice for me to step in and jump in with him as a co-chef. The scariest moment of my life was going to tell Roland that I'm leaving. I've never probably been that scared in my life. And I look back at it now and I tell people, it's like, don't be that afraid to like tell what your worth is or put your notice in. And it's like, but when you're in that moment with someone you really respect and you know it's going to make them angry, you leaving.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, you like, he just said, yeah, okay, whatever. And he shook my hand and he left. And then the next day we actually had a real talk about it. And, you know, he was very supportive after that. I gave him a month notice too, also. So.
That was smart of you. Yeah. Respectful.
So, yeah, off to Temperance. And that was really the shot to everything.
Wow. And thank you, too, for sharing that you went through a tough time, because I think that folks, when they listen to interviews sometimes with entrepreneurs, it just seems like, oh, yeah, and then everything worked out. No, there are bumps in the road along the way. And I'm sure that it gave you a sense of more like resilience and just a clear vision of what you wanted to do with life when you went through all of that.
Yeah. I mean, I would not be here today without it. And I'm fortunate I didn't kill anyone or myself, right? It was as terrible as it is, I would not be here without it, no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. So what were those first few moments for Duck Sel? How did you come up with the concept? When did you say you really did take that jump of, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do something that's mine?
So when I mentioned I was jealous of Sam opening Temperance, and I was sitting there, was like, well, I need to open my restaurant, basically. When I moved into that room to rent, my roommate and I, to impress a girl, I decided to throw a little dinner party for her, like a 6 or 7 course dinner. And I invited some friends of mine and had my roommate sit down. And after that, I realized I should probably try and do a pop-up and trying to think of what to call it. So I had to create an Instagram handle right before that. And I wanted to come up with something clever. So the first thing I came up with was Donald Duck Confit. And it just worked so perfectly. It was such a whimsical, funny thing that it's like, well, maybe it should still, the pop-up should still resonate with that name and kind of bridge off of it. But what, right? And my roommate and I sat there one night drinking beers, just trying to figure out what we call it. And I just bought these posters off of Amazon, a molecule of salt and pepper. And I was like, well, what if the body, it was a duck, and the body of the duck was a salt chain of sodium and chloride, and then the organic wings and head and feet all coming out of it. What if that was like the image of it, and it was called Salted Duck? And I instantly loved that. So Salted Duck was born. We did a couple pop-ups, and then I got the calling for Temperance and dropped everything for it. Fast forward a few years, went to Temperance, had the unexpected, not so unexpected, but, you know, the breakup from it all, and went off to Woodwind, and then the pandemic happened. And I had a few followers at the time, and one of them called me over to do a little dinner for them because his wife was pregnant. And so it wasn't really an ideal thing to be going out anywhere or because of COVID and all that. So I came in and did a small dinner for them. And then I got brought back to Woodwind to reopen the restaurant, let go 2 weeks later. To save money, basically.
Oh, no. Oh, come on.
Yeah. So I had another family that was following me for a few years, and they were supposed to come in that Friday. And I sent them a message on Facebook. I wasn't that close with them at the time, but I was like getting close with them. And I just told them, look, I'm not going to be here this Friday. I'm no longer at Woodwind. They let me go. I'm not telling you not to come in, but I can't guarantee what the food's going to be like for you guys. So your call.
Yeah.
So they decided, like, maybe we should have Don do a dinner in our home. And so I did one. And then they had me do another. And I threw that one up on social media, and it took like wildfire. And so I realized, like, shit, I think I have something going here. So I guess I'll, like, bring back Salted Duck, right? I was like, but I don't know if I really love Salted Duck. What if it was, like, kind of reimagine as Duck Sel. Like,
Yes.
meaning relatively the same ideologies are still there, but then also that fun play of words. And so Duck Sel was born, and I started doing private dinners. And then I took a job. Like 4 months later, I took a job. I was like, I really sat there like, is this the right move for me? Should I be taking a job when Duck Sel's really starting to pick up steam right now? And I was like, trying to figure out what was the best option. Was like, I took the job mainly because of getting my name out there more. I still had a name to build, even though Tempera's really shot up a lot of stuff. I was still unknown only from 1 year of being with the Star. So I took the job, and after a year, it was not the right move. So I left, and I restarted Duck Sel again as a means to make money while I looked for another job. And after a few of these dinners, one of the places I did a dinner at, the owners of that space were like, you should come here and do a pop-up. And it was like, maybe, we'll see. I don't know. And yeah, that's kind of how I got into the pop-ups, and everything started taking off. And I think it was like 6 months later, I basically stopped looking for a job. And then a year later, I just never considered I'd be looking for a job anymore. And Duck Sel was it.
Yeah. I love that, similar to how you fell in love with food, is essentially how your concept kept pulling you back. It kept saying, don't give up on this. Don't give up on this. I'm still here for you. You just have to come to the right time, the right conclusion. The universe was really looking out for you with that one.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about the dinners themselves. How many folks are you typically serving? How many courses? I've had the pleasure of eating your food, but talk a little bit more about how you put the menus together and what you can typically see at one of your experiences.
So we do a 15 and 7 course experience. The 7 course was added, through the first year. We were lucky if we got 8 people at the table. And my girlfriend was the biggest push on this, because for the first few months of doing it, the first 2 dinners I did, Eater picked up on it, wrote about it, and my tickets sold out. And then the next month, with no media coverage, and no one knows about you, we sold, I think, 4 tickets. So the first ones I lost money on, and it was a lot of work. It was hours and hours of work with a lot of people. And for 4 people, it's like, am I going to go through all that again? And so the Wednesday before, I had this crazy idea. I called up my girlfriend. I was like, hey, crazy idea, I know, but we only have 4 covers this Friday. We have a table for 8, right? We could just put them at our table and maybe just invite a few more people to fill up the table. But then, I don't have to transport everything and make the loss of money hurt more than it already does. Yeah. And so we ordered a whole bunch of stuff. We decked out the bathroom to make it look like an amenity full bathroom, anything that we could do. And that dinner, it took 4.5, 5 hours, I think, I think it was 12 courses at the time. Yeah, it was just poorly organized. I mean, it's just like opening a restaurant. And then we did that. It was the same thing at the event space we did it at. And then it happened again because it's a new space, trying to figure out how to make it work. But the people that came had the most magical time. Everyone was gushing and had such a fun time. And we realized, I think we found something here. I think this is what it needs to be. And so we eventually moved and found a space that was better for it. And we continued doing it. Originally, it started out with 16 max. And we only did that once in the first year, I think it was. And that following year, the day before Mother's Day, we were shifting tables around, and a leg snapped off the table the night before we needed it. Fortunately, a neighbor had a table that we could use. And when I was sitting there trying to figure out, all right, well, I need to get a new table, I was measuring the space, and I was like, I could get a little bit of a bigger table. And so we realized you could do 18. And then we had some people really pushing to come in. We were sold out one night, and I was like, I guess we could put them at this table, and realized we could start doing 20. And then we moved, and we had a chef counter. So we ended up starting to do 24 people. And now we're at a space that we can do 36 people. And then we have a rooftop on top of that. So it's really wild to watch this projection of how it's been growing. But yeah, we can do up to 36 for a private event. 24 is a really good, sweet number for the actual culinary experiences. The food itself has transformed into very whimsical takes on my childhood of growing up and eating, essentially. Like one of my courses is a play on Chef Boyardee in the form of like spaghetti and meatballs, a duck meatball with that. The menu itself has kind of transformed into being like 70% duck, just kind of incidentally of just like have all this duck product, like let's just add it to here, let's add it to there, right? It's definitely all different versions of duck you could think of, including one into a dessert. Currently right now, it's a cinnamon roll with foie gras, which is great. I really love it. It is heavy though. But yeah, it's a fun, wild roller coaster of how it just from being let go from woodwind to getting to here.
Yeah, you took that moment and you said, let me just put my all into it. And you allowed the natural growth to happen. I think we want everything to happen all at once. We're like, why isn't everything perfect? Why doesn't everyone love this already? And you stuck with it. You also see the ducks throughout your decorations, and you have a duck call in between courses. So you've even expanded it further. I've seen folks try to take those ducks. Those are expensive. Don't take the ducks.
They took them still.
They'll still take them. They'll still take them. Yeah. But I think, again, you took something, again, Donald Duck. It could have gone Disney-fied. It could have gone, kind of cheesy. And it's really chic. It's really fun. You love to play with dry ice, too.
Yes.
So you talked a little bit about the evolution. What do you want to start seeing for the future? What do you think is coming up?
It's a good question. We kind of take it day by day. We found an idea and market that has really worked for us. And people keep asking me when I'm going to go brick and mortar. And it's just like, I keep telling them, like, why should I right now? Like, if I have such a successful business going the way it's going and I have a lot more control, less stress over it, like as small of a business as I am, it's much easier. The smaller you are, the easier you can pivot, essentially. So if something were to happen, like if say these coming up dinners, as slow as they might be, like I don't have people depending on a full-time salary from me. So it's easier to just not have those people come in, especially because they're only coming in 2 to 4 days a month. So the future itself is just to keep riding out with what we have. We can't curate an experience exactly like this in a actual brick and mortar commercial spot. So we're just, having fun while we're at it.
I like it. And just looking to see how you can keep being creative, because
yes, exactly.
It provides that nice intimate environment too, that even if you just come with 2 or 4, you're sat at a table with other folks. And I kind of love that. I love getting to know people over food.
Yeah.
Now, we do have to touch on a really special moment in your life. You're one of the youngest chefs to have ever earned a Michelin star. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell us what that moment was like. What was that era like? And when you have an accolade like that, how does it really affect how you then work forward from that?
Yeah. So the first year I was at Temperance, I was there for 2.5 years in total. The first year, Sam and I, we were co-chefs at that time. We kept putting up food, and we almost closed down every single Tuesday. And Wednesdays and Thursdays, we would have 2 to 4 people in our dining room the whole night. We would send out dishes, and you could see food coming back, and like eating it all. And we would just tell ourselves, like, well, these people don't know what they're talking about. We know what Michelin is. We're serving Michelin-starred food right now. And the first year the guide came out, we didn't get the star. It was a really sad moment because we thought we were guaranteed to get it almost. But it was probably the most humbling and eye-opening experiences of my life, because then I realized, like, you know what? Like, Michelin's not filling up our restaurant right now. It's not the people we need to be focused on cooking for. It's the people that are coming as of right now that are the most important people. And it's not us sitting down and eating it and enjoying our own food. It's them. We need to pay attention to them, what they want, what our market wants. And so we started to try, like, if we were seeing food come back on a plate, or if we weren't getting any positive feedback on a dish, I knew I needed to start changing the dishes. And so that's kind of led the following year, was focusing on that. And it rewarded itself in that sense, right? That following year, we were not expecting it at all. We just kind of like we're just not going to get Michelin. We're just not that caliber of a restaurant, I guess. So we never really thought much about it. And then a few days before the guide announcement, we got an email from Michelin asking to confirm our phone number. It's like, that's really weird. Like, when they wanted to confirm that last year after we opened. And then the day of, we got a call from the Chicago Tribune saying they wanted to come and have a film crew in our restaurant, but they don't know why. They were just told that maybe they're sending news crews to a whole bunch of restaurants or something like that. And it's like, okay, that's also really weird. And then we got the call. And unfortunately, the night before, we were there till, this is actually average. We were there till 4 to 5 a.m. just doing prep sometimes, just because it was such a small team and all the things we were doing, it required that work. We were also very efficient at that time too. So we only got a few hours of sleep a night. And so there is a video online still of us getting that call. And it's just like the most just no energy between any of us, because we're all so tired getting the call. And you're just trying to for the cameras, yes. But several hours later, it just became a moment. It's finally, I'm waking up and it's like, this is crazy. Did this just happen? Because we were the only new restaurant that year too.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's a crazy moment. It's a life-changing experience to be leading a restaurant to Michelin, especially at such a young age too. And it's there are definitely chefs that are way younger than me, were younger than me, that are probably way better chefs, that are definitely better chefs than me. And I was just fortunate enough to be on a stage to be able to present. And that's the biggest thing to a lot of things for some people, is that they just never get the opportunity. I was fortunate of how close I got with Sam. It was at the right time, right place, right moment to get the opportunity to it. But it does definitely change your whole entire life and everything. Part of Duck Sel's success is because of that. I would never have met that family that had me do a private dinner for that. It makes it easier to have a family call you to do a private dinner because you have that on your resume, So yeah, it's been everything since.
I'm so glad. And like you said, it was once you guys really focused on what people actually wanted and the heart of what you're trying to do, and not just cooking for the potential of an award, that's when folks said, no, you're really leaning into yourself, and this is what matters. This is what's going to get it. Exactly. That's really cool. So you've really then established yourself as a member of this newer guard. We can name folks from, the 80s and 90s who have really paved the way to where folks are today. What do you think that this generation is doing particularly well? And how are you still taking inspiration from Roland and some of these other folks?
It's so interesting how we talk about technology changing the way our lives is and everything. As I mentioned earlier, Google was a huge teacher for me. It definitely was my second mentor. And, trying to get, for a while too, even before the start, I had no money. Culinary school really destroyed me. It wrecked me financially. I had actually defaulted on a loan, debt collectors calling me and all that. When you owe $80,000, you're making 30-ish thousand a year. Are you supposed to pay that back? I was making, I think, 30, maybe 35 as a sous chef. And, it's so crazy to think.
Right.
But with all this technology and everything, the power of Instagram also, it's easier for people that can't afford to go out to restaurants, or basically the restaurants I was going out to is let's go get breakfast and keep it under $20 a person, because that's what I can afford once a week. Instagram became a huge influence on that, to be able to see what other people are doing without having to go there. So you're getting ideas of techniques, culinary books, and all that are a useful tool. It really helped shape and give me ideas. And at a certain point, it did become a thing where I let go. And it's there might be a cool idea I see, but to keep your own style, I just have some influence, but it still has to come out as me in the end. And
yeah,
that is a hard thing to hold on to, because you'll see a lot of these kids that are working for these amazing chefs, right? And you'll see that it's well, that's just version 2.0 of that chef doing the same stuff. And it's you need to figure out how to break free on your own from working for these great chefs. there's so much technique and flavor development that you can learn from these chefs. Roland, the biggest thing I ever took from him was flavor pairing, and like constantly always giving him everything to taste to see what goes through his head and what he thinks. And it's like, add a little bit of consomme to this sauce, and all of a sudden the sauce is like 10 times better. What the hell just happened? But yeah, like trying to learn flavor pairing and all that. And like, you can't really, you can get an idea to learning flavors, but you can't really like learn. It kind of comes naturally of like pairing flavors together and then trying to get your own voice out under from a chef. And it was easy to get out from under Roland too, right? Because he's such a classical trained chef and makes classical food. So I was like, well, Google being my other teacher and learning these other ingredients like really helped break free from that right away. I still hold on to those French ideas. I actually haven't done a French sauce in a while, but I do miss French sauces, and that used to be a huge part of everything I used to do. But yeah, I think they paved a way for a lot of things, and I think people can learn a lot from them, but there is definitely a moment to need a break free.
Yeah, and put a twist, like you said, on the own. It's now taking it, putting it on the mood board that is Instagram and these other channels, and then saying, what can I do that's making it myself? And I want to know what your thoughts are on, say, like the TikTok generation in terms of chefs. Folks are getting out there that way. Yeah. I'm really bad. I'm actually like never on TikTok.
I don't watch any TikToks. I watch TikToks because I'm going through Facebook, and then there's a video of a TikTok on Facebook, and that's it. I don't know. I think it is crazy how powerful it's become. I think for the most part, there's so much to learn off of social media to begin with, right? But as powerful of social media is to influence trends is what's actually mind-blowing to me. You know, like, let's just get as simple during the pandemic, the Tide Pod challenge. Like, I can't believe people were doing that, but it was all because of a social media trend, right? But that's how heavy of an influence it has on the world and our generation right now. So obviously you have to have a strong social media presence to get good marketing nowadays. Right. It's hard to sort through what's true, right? When you see some of these influencers, and I am definitely guilty as well of using influencers to come to our place to basically put it up to get more awareness of us, right? It's just how you have to pay to play now, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's become a huge influence on everything.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, too, as much as you can put things out there, you have to actually still go through the process of learning how to cook and learning how to taste and pair things together to actually become good. Because, yeah, you can throw things out there, but if it doesn't taste good, then it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It just looks good. Yeah. So I'll ask one more question here before we get to the world's best and hardest question. Throughout this whole journey that you've been through now, what's one piece of advice you'd want to give someone who wants to get into the culinary space or start their own business?
So someone wanting to get into the culinary world, I appreciate my path and trajectory of how I did it. And it's becoming more and more of a lost cause. Don't get me wrong. I think everyone deserves to get paid. Everyone needs to come from somewhere. There are going to be people starting at a restaurant with zero experience. But the people that are looking to do better, you know, money is important, but money shouldn't be the most important thing at that moment. Yes, make sure you find work that you can pay your bills and everything. But there are more than 40 hours a week in order to work and learn. So that gives you more opportunity to work at these other restaurants for free to really gain experience. Stages aren't the most useful tool to a restaurant, right? They help, sure. They help pick a case of parsley, right? They aren't going to make the restaurant an extra $10,000 that night for being there, right? So it's this hard argument of like, well, they deserve to get paid nowadays. It's like they're also here to learn. And it's not like the restaurant could deal without them. You know, when I have a stage, I still have a full team. They're there to learn and see the operation and everything. And I think it's one of the best tools a young chef can take to use to learn more.
Yeah.
For someone trying to start their own business, it's extremely difficult. It's difficult, but it's not. It's very overwhelming at first. And you have to be prepared to lose money to start. It costs money to make money.
Yeah.
When I first started the pop-ups, I didn't really think twice about like, well, you need to buy silverware. You got to buy glasses and plateware. And also I'm $5,000 in the hole. And I know it's still not exactly enough to start. And then I lost, I think what was like $2,000 in my first dinner because I'm still trying to figure out the operation. The standard operating procedure is to try and make it more efficient and for everything on like the money side, the work side and all that. And then there is a point where you get to a turning point to it all, to where you start making the money. Your name's starting to get out there. You're starting to get more business. You have growth. It is overwhelming. It is difficult. But once you get through those hurdles, it's still really difficult, but it's a little less difficult.
It's worth it to see the steps you've taken so far and how far you came from that time. It's just a different type of difficult, but very rewarding.
Yes, exactly.
Amazing. All right, Don. Well, we've gotten to the point in the podcast. As a reminder to everyone, this is called The Perfect Bite, not only because I love to chat with folks who are across the value chain that is food, a perfect bite of that, but also because we all have our own perfect bite, a memory, a recipe that you grew up with, or just a bite that will never, ever leave you. So, Donald, what is your perfect bite?
You know, before the thought of me ever becoming a chef and going back to the very beginning of how it was cheeseburgers for every meal, I'll never forget the first time I understood flavors coming together when I was at McDonald's eating my Happy Meal and took a bite of the burger, took my French fries, dipped it in ketchup, and ate the fries. And it was like, whoa, these things together make it all better. Like, the burger's good, the fries are good, but this is amazing together. And yeah, every single bite of burger now, it needs to be accompanied with fries to this day.
I love that. I love that. I think it's so simple and beautiful because, again, you've had a real journey from the food that you've fallen in love with and that you've cooked, but it's still at your heart at the end of the day. Just something simple and something that just tastes good. Good old Mickey D's. Oh my gosh, Don, this has been so great. As we wrap up here, can you let listeners know where to find you? So how to book the experiences for Duck Sel, your social accounts, and anywhere else they can find you coming up.
Yeah, we're located in Chicago, right? You can find Duck Sel culinary experiences on Talk or through our website. Follow me, Donald Duck Confit on Instagram, and Duck_Sel on Instagram as well. Or sign up for our email blast too.
Love that. Very simple. Well, thanks again for joining me. And everyone, this was Chef Donald Young's Perfect Bite. Thanks for tuning in to The Perfect Bite today. You can listen to future episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Thanks in advance for subscribing, rating, and reviewing. You can follow The Perfect Bite on social media @PerfectBitePod. Now go get something good to eat.